So I did what most 24-year-olds would do. What do you think I did? I walked away. What you should learn is the difference between single family versus multifamily. Why does one produce so much more income with about a lot less effort? You want to learn all the steps of how to get involved in multifamily. There is so many different roles you can play in multifamily real estate. I intend to teach you that. Tenant vacates with notice, at least you have some time, but nonetheless, you will have a mortgage payment and expenses with no income. Whereas if you have a multifamily property, you've got multiple dwellings. Hey, thanks for stopping by. You're here because you want to learn about multifamily real estate. Multifamily real estate has taken me places I could have never imagined 38 years ago when I started. You see, it's taken me around the world. It's given me luxury items and a lifestyle, which is the most important part that I've always dreamed about. You see, I learned to do real estate the multifamily way. And most people who are in real estate, they don't know that this is an accessible area of real estate for them. Because multifamily real estate is the next progression. I like to say graduation to multifamily. Although multifamily has taken me places I could never have imagined, I really started out very humbly. And let me tell you a little bit about that. When I started in real estate, I was a mere 24 years old. I didn't know much about real estate other than I decided to take a weekend course. I seen an infomercial on television. They said become rich in real estate. So I said to myself, this seems like an area I could do. And I wasn't just thinking of real estate from that point of view. I was just thinking of something better because I was a microbiologist by trade. I was working in the field for more than 2 years when I realized that is not an area of life that I wanted to pursue forever. You see, I was a water quality analyst for the city of New York. And what that does is simply test water every day. And for me, as a young man, that was rather boring. Although I had that degree in microbiology, I thought it was fantastic to have that degree and do the kind of work I was doing until I was actually doing it. Now, if any of you guys are in a field that you're not quite loving, you know what I'm talking about. Now, I come from very humble beginnings. I had a very normal childhood, didn't know I was poor until I went to college. And one thing that I remember and I always mention when I talk to people is a teacher I had named Miss Kelty in high school. You know how in high school they always tell you to tell them what you want to be when you grow up? Well, for me, I had a wise guy answer. I said to her, I don't want to be anything. I just want to have money and live my life. Well, you know, she said, Mr. Georges, good luck with that. She didn't live long enough for me to show her that I figured out a way that I don't do a whole lot, and that is multifamily real estate. But as I stated, I had a degree in microbiology. After high school, went to college, got a degree, worked in the field, and realized I didn't love it. Afterwards, I seen a infomercial by a man named Albert Lowry. I went to his weekend course. And being the kind of person I was growing up in New York City, I didn't think there were limitations to what I could do. So I just took the weekend course. Next thing you know, I bought myself a 6-family property. Yes, at the New York City auction. And although I knew nothing about real estate at the time, it just seemed like a good deal. So I bought this 6-family property. It had no floors, no windows, no doors, and what they call those are a shell. It had no bathrooms, no kitchens, and nothing of sorts. So me thinking that it's a simple process to renovate and fix, what did I do next? Well, I decided, let me get some contractors in to give me some bids on what it would cost to fix this property. And So I did. The contractors came in, one after another. And finally, one of the contractors came in and he said, "Young man, you have a problem." And I said, "What is it?" He said, "Well, to fix this property and make it serviceable, it's going to cost you about $150,000. This is $1985, people. And at the time, I had got several bids for that price. And I said, "Well, that's not a problem." I said, "Most of the contractors gave me similar bids." And he says, "Young man, that's not your problem. Your problem is when I finish fixing it, it won't be worth the $150,000 that you're putting into it." So I'm like, "What?" Obviously, I knew nothing about real estate, knew nothing about getting comparable sales or even getting rent comps. It just sounded like a good idea to fix this property, rent it out, and make a lot of money, as I learned in my weekend course. However, that was not the way it works. You see, I didn't have any education. That was the problem. So after I did my homework, I found out that this property would be worth approximately $125,000 after fix-up. Now, I bought the property for $27,000. So now I'd be $50,000 or so in the hole with this property. So I did what most 24-year-olds would do. What do you think I did? I walked away. I let the property go. I didn't care at that point because I knew I had no more money to put into the property because to begin with, I took the down payment off of a cash advance on my credit card. So now I've got this big cash advance to pay in addition to the money I used to clean it up. So I was into that property for a good amount of money. So I walked away. Fortunately for me, I didn't get foreclosed on because the property got eminent domained. Okay, so for those of you who don't know what eminent domain means, that's when the city or county that the property resides in takes it back for their use. So this property was at 1425 St. Mark's, Brooklyn, New York. So if you're listening out there and you know about Brooklyn, go by. You'll see that it is a park now. Okay, so I have some history with that park. And that's what my first purchase was. So from there, I ended up quitting my job, which was a good city job. I worked for the city of New York, and I decided I was going to quit that job and become a real estate broker. You guys know commercial real estate in New York City doesn't pay a salary? Well, I knew that, but I thought I'd make plenty of money in my endeavors. Well, my dad thought I was crazy. My friends thought I was crazy, but I was determined that I was going to make a sale in commercial real estate. Well, I didn't make many sales and money was getting thin. I started really running out of money and my life took a turn for the worse because I was determined to make money in real estate. So I end up eating peanut butter for breakfast, lunch, and dinner off of a spoon. That was my determination level. But all of it goes back to not really knowing what to do in the business. I didn't have the education. So naturally, at this point, I had to go back and get a day job. But I was determined that real estate was my future. So what did I do? I studied real estate on my own back in a time where there was no YouTube and there were no coaches or mentors to show you the ropes. So what do? I just keep learning on my own with a little bit of seminars that came to town. And eventually, I started to make a little bit of money. But here's the problem with the money I was making. It was transactional. Because at this point in my career, I didn't know something very important. What I was doing was running around trying to make money in real estate, which I did. I did buy and hold properties, where that's where you buy a property and you put a tenant in there and you hold on and pray that they pay the rent. Okay? Then I did buy, hold, and flip. So I would buy them, fix them up, and I'd sell them for a profit. And in that interim, I'd run into properties that were not exactly had the margin I wanted, so I would wholesale those deals. That's where you sell the contract. And I did other things like residential leases and commercial leases. I purchased property subject to. And if you don't know what that is, I'll cover that more in detail during the course. But I purchased short sales, I purchased lease options, and in addition to that, I purchased property via tax certificate, online auctions. Well, not back then, but I did buy courthouse auctions at that time. And later I bought online auctions. I bought HUD properties, VA properties, I bought mixed use, and I've even done commercial development of a 50 unit. Now, these are all the good things that happened in that interim. But the most important thing I learned from that process is that if you want to make money in any industry, you have to have the appropriate mindset to do so. And for me, that was spending money on education. So if you're here and you don't plan on spending money on education, you watch me for too long because you have to do it. It's just the way it works. If you want to be a doctor, you have to go to medical school. And if you want to learn about multifamily real estate, you can flip around on YouTube and you can watch a couple of those videos and figure it out and take a lifetime of figuring out how to do it the right way. However, that wasn't my story. I bought every kind of education possible, and I learned the hard way, and it took me a long time. What I'd like to do for you is help save some of that time. You see, because I had no focus. I would run around like a dog with a shiny ball. If there was a real estate course, I took it. But that is not the way to make money in any industry. The way to make money in any industry, whether it be real estate or being a doctor, is to focus. And I like to make an acronym, not remembering where I got it from, if I made it up or found it somewhere along the line, but that is focus. Follow one course until successful. You see, that's the way you get to what we call the proverbial bag. That bag of cash is when you focus. You see, I would advocate anyone to focus on one lane of real estate. And if you're here, chances are you want to graduate to multifamily real estate. And if you focus in on that, I promise you, your lifestyle will change because you'll be making the kind of money you've always wished you could, and that will help you get to where you want to go. So what should you learn if you want to get into real estate, into multifamily real estate? Well, let me start that off. Why should you graduate to multifamily? Other than the fact that you're tired of running around for single family houses, what you should learn is the difference between single family versus multifamily. Why does one produce so much more income with about a lot less effort? You want to learn all the steps of how to get involved in multifamily because there are various roles to play. You might become a capital raiser. You might become an acquisition expert. You might become an asset management. There is so many different roles you can play in multifamily real estate. I intend to teach you that. Also, you may need to build a team to help you get where you're going because most of the money is not coming out of your pocket. So you'll also need to learn how to analyze the property. You see, unlike in residential real estate, commercial real estate is dictated by the income it produces. So you need to figure out, and I will show you these steps, how to analyze the property. Okay, so you'll need to know income, expenses, what it's going to cost for certain variables in order to understand the numbers and forecast what you will make on that property. I'll also show you how to close the deal on the property, the steps that it takes, and most importantly, I will show you how to be a good asset manager so that you can manage these properties to profit. Now, multifamily is special because of its economies of scale. You see, when you have one single property, all of the income comes from that one tenant. When you have a multifamily property, and when I'm talking multifamily, just in case you didn't know, I'm not talking about a duplex, a triplex, or a quad. I am talking about 10, 20, 30, 50, 100 units or more. Yes, you can own those assets. And you've never seen a real estate for sale sign on a 50-unit property. The reason being is because it's a different game. So in multifamily, you can do economies of scale. And the other thing, and the most favorable thing, is you can force appreciation. Now, what is forced appreciation? Being that multifamily properties are based on income, if you can raise the income, you in turn raise the value, thereby what we call forced appreciation. So when you do that, you make the property value more. Also, you get to depreciate these assets. So you get a big tax write from it, and you can manage the vacancies because you'll have a good situation with property management companies. You have management efficiencies, and they will manage the tenant base for you so that you will not be dealing with tenants and toilets ever. You will deal with a property manager. That alone will improve your lifestyle if you are doing single family houses now, because you know if you're doing all the single families by yourself, you are running around talking to tenants, fixing problems, and it's not a fun thing to do. Also, you get a much quicker equity buildup. So basically, you're getting richer faster. So, how do you get into the game? Well, you can build a portfolio ground up like I did. That's a slow, methodical way. Absolutely, you can do that. You can decide not to be in multifamily at all and stay in the single family, but you know you can't build up to the size of assets I'm talking about if you stay there. You can become a deal finder, or in our business, we call them acquisition personnel. Or you can become a capital raiser. That is a person who is very good at talking to people, making good relationships, and finding those people with the money, because that is what a capital raiser does. Or you may decide to be in this business as a passive investor. Now, if you're a passive investor, you are going to put your money in a deal and let another group of people find these large multifamily properties and make a return for you. But a quicker way to get into this business is to get a mentor, someone like me who's been through the ropes for 38 years now. So I've seen market cycles go up, I've seen them come down, but I've been there through the good and bad times. So when I coach you, I'm coaching you from experience. And if you have that kind of experience, it limits your risk and getting involved in this business. So let me talk for a second about the differences in multifamily versus single family. So if you have a single family property, you've got one roof, you've got one HVAC system, we got one set of plumbing, and you've got maintenance coming all and taxes and insurance coming out of one tenant's income. What happens if that tenant vacates? Tenant vacates with notice, at least you have some time, but nonetheless, you will have a mortgage payment and expenses with no income. Whereas if you have a multifamily property, you've got multiple dwellings. So in this, let's make a scenario of a 10 unit, something small that we can do the math on. You can keep 9 out of the 10 tenants when you have a vacancy, which means 90% of the income is still coming in, so you don't have to sweat the small stuff of having an absent tenant. And a lot of times, if you're already in this business, you know many tenants leave without notice, and they leave the place in shambles. So if you have a single family, you've not only got to make the mortgage payment on your own, you've got to do the repairs with no income coming in and wait to get a new tenant and hope the same thing doesn't happen again. But with multifamily, let's take a 10-unit scenario, and I'm using those small numbers for you to understand the numbers. One tenant leaves, you're at 90% occupancy. You still have 90% of the income to pay the mortgage, to pay the expenses, and everything else that's involved. But let me give you some more information. I'm going to give you a scenario of a single family property versus a 35 unit, for example. Let's say, for the sake of argument, you buy a single family property, you take money out of your pocket. $40,000 would be a respectable down payment on that $200,000 single family house. You'd have a $160,000 mortgage, and you'd probably have a net income, which is a vocabulary term which you'll learn throughout the course, is NOI is what we call it. So you'd have approximately $21,000 of spendable income, which you will use about half to pay for the mortgage. Then you'd have a cash flow of roughly $9,500 left over. Then, if you compare your same $40,000, right? Or maybe you might need 50, you're going to put that money in and you're going to get investors to invest the rest. So they would put up approximately $1 million on a $3.5 million asset. Okay? So now you've got a mortgage balance of roughly $2.4 million, and you have a net income of approximately $190,000. You'll have a mortgage payment, which is not taken out of that, of approximately $130,000, which leaves you about $60,000, little more than that. And that goes into HIP National Bank. Okay? So that's why multifamily is a better vehicle. So let's look at what happens over time. If you have a 35 unit, for example, and let's say conservatively, just for round number purposes, you are collecting $1,000 a unit and you have a vacancy allowance of, let's say, 10%. You're going to have a vacancy loss of $42,000. That leaves you an effective gross income, which is another term that we'll talk about, of $378,000. And if you have expenses of about 50%, that leaves you about the $190,000 I talked about. That $190,000 would represent the $3.5 million price of the property. Now, here's where the magic happens, and this is what you will learn. You're going to analyze properties so that you know how much rent you could get by fixing up the property. So in this scenario, if we went in and did some renovations, we can turn that $1,000 a month rent into $1,350. And that would be quite an increase on the gross income. And then I'll teach you how to lower expenses. And if I did that in this scenario, I would lower the expenses. I would reduce the expenses by 5%, let's say. And that would be $28,000 or so. Then, in addition to that, I'm going to have a new effective gross income of $538,000. And if I lowered my vacancy rate by being a good manager, I would have a net income of $280,000. Same property, just new management and some know-how. And I have changed the property. This is what the forced appreciation is, from being worth $3.5 million to $5.1 million. That's an income of $1.6 million over the course of 3 to 5 years. Now, how would you like to make $1.6 million on one property versus multiple single families of running around? So if you compare the two, and you have what we have normal appreciation times, not what we've been having the last couple of years, you'd have an increase of about 5% a year. And that's on a single family house. So over the course of 5 years, it would be worth $55,000 $1,000 more than you purchased it for, roughly about $255. But in the same time frame with your same level of investment, you would have increased the rents in that property by $350 per unit. And you would lower the expenses by, let's say, 2%, and you increase the net operating income to $279 in that same time frame. Single family, $55,000 in value. Same time frame, $1.6 million in increased value. So the thing here is that real estate at this level, multifamily, you learn how to make it a team sport because you are going to build a team. Now, many people don't realize this, but if you take in consideration your average sports team and you hear that it has changed hands, I'll use a few that might have ring a bell to those of you who are sports fans. If you took the Brooklyn Nets, a few years ago, Jay-Z was the face of the purchase of the Brooklyn Nets. More recently, Magic Johnson was the face of purchasing the Dodgers and the Washington, what do they call them now? Commanders. But you, as an outsider, not understanding that this is a team sport, may have thought these big celebrities purchased these properties by signing a check and getting a loan. That is the furthest thing from the truth. They purchased these properties in what we call a syndication. They were able to get their rich buddies to put up the down payment money, and they put a portion of the down payment money as well. And that's what you'll learn, is how to syndicate a property so that you can own a 50, a 60, a 100 unit property without having all the money. So, what is syndication? This is how it works. Generally, what you will do, the core of a syndication is that you will put a group of individuals together. You will get yourself a syndication team. And what happens is the money gets pooled together, very much like stock purchase. And the difference between that and a partnership, although partnerships have similarities, a partnership is maybe one or two individuals, and you're not selling the property in shares. So what happens with these big assets, sports teams, large buildings, commercial property, multifamily, they're buying those in shares. They're dividing that property in shares. And the way you do that is you hire a syndication attorney. And I stress that. And I will give you the name of one and show you how you turn these properties into syndications.